All right. What is going on? Figured I'd like to get started just about 15 minutes early or so. So just gonna wait for more people to file in. You guys can ask any questions. We're doing the standard. For those who are going to be joining just tonight, every Wednesday night, 6 p.m. Mountain Standard Time is when I do a live Q&A session, so you guys can jump on in, say what's up, ask any questions you have. These kind of exist as a state of the Second Amendment kind of thing, but also at the same time letting you guys ask any questions that you have. I like to have as much engagement as I can. Plus, ammunition, pretty hard to find, pretty expensive. Not as easy to do a lot of the shooting videos that I'd like to do. Not as easy to get some gun reviews in that I'd like to do. So at the end of the day, trying to stay concurrent, keep things moving is what I'd like to do. So for anyone who's there, if you guys just let me know. The visual, got some new lighting system, so hopefully you guys can see a little better. Hopefully the audio is coming in. So if you guys are having any challenges, let's see. Not seeing. Okay. Let's see real quick. All right. Does anybody hear me at all? I might have to stop it and then let's see. Let me type it in real quick. See what kind of response I get real quick. Just trying to test. Okay, so you can. All right, you guys can all hear me. I was getting a little worried because I don't think I changed that setting before I went live. So if you guys can hear me, then I guess we'll keep going. Okay. What do you think of cases, telescopic or caseless cases, telescopic ammo? If you have heard of it, thanks. Yeah, I moved. The microphone's actually like right here now. Okay, that's good to know. So we have two different things. We have caseless ammunition, and then we have telescopic ammunition. So caseless ammunition, that's the classic example of like the HK G11, where it was just a self-contained unit and it would get loaded into the magazine. And once it was fired, there was nothing left. There was no spent brass coming out. It was just the whole thing gets fired, projectile goes down range, down through the barrel, and there's nothing left. And testing on that, at least at that time, we're talking 70s era, 80s era. It was a little bit hard to guarantee that caseless ammunition was going to stay the way it should be for long-term storage. Maybe it gets moisture or rained on. So I think there's some issues with that. We've had some great success with the standard smokeless powder cased ammunition, brass case with a projectile. So the spent case exits the weapon. Brand new cartridge comes in. Lots of success there because you can actually seal, the rim of the projectile with the brass if you want to. What's typical on military ammo is you'll also see some kind of lacquer on the primer, sealing up the primer from the elements as well. So from ignition to the powder inside the cartridge, you can guarantee for many decades, if it's stored and sealed properly, this ammunition is going to be good to go. So that's kind of been the long-standing standard. Caseless ammo, from what I understand, not as easy to get that done. Not to say that it's impossible, but just to say that maybe not as reliable in the testing or the known examples that I've seen. Telescopic ammo is like the Sig Sauer in the current M4 or replacement for the modular carbine system that the Army's running right now still is, in their case, they have some kind of steel or aluminum body where the rim is, or the rest of it is brass, where it's kind of a two-part construction to limit weight. At the end of the day, I'm more a fan of the telescopic kind of ammo, if we're going to do it that way, or just the standard brass projectile, standard cartridge setup. So lots of testing to be done there. Another thing people don't realize, especially in a military sense, this is ammunition that's going to get produced, and it's going to get stored. It's going to get transported. You may take it out for a range day, and it's humid, it's hot, it's raining, and you don't end up shooting all the ammo. So that live ammo goes back in the containers with a proper count. The ammunition guys come and pick it back up and resort it and package it again. Stuff's going to be sent overseas. It's, going to be handed down. The ammunition I received, every deployment, we would show up and we would just be a bunch of loose rounds, and then we would load our magazines with it. Some of those magazines didn't get shot the whole deployment. If you have spare mags and things in the vehicle, in an assault pack, whatever. And then when the next unit took over for us, we would shuck out the rounds out of our magazines, count it, sign it over to the new unit coming in, and they would take those same rounds and put it in their magazines. So from a military standpoint, having ammunition that is very ironclad or protected from the elements, protected from the oils on your hands, protected from, being exposed to oxygen or the air, moisture, rain, being protected from just the elements and not being stored properly or being stored in magazines its whole life since production pretty much. That's a pretty important thing. So if caseless or telescopic ammunition cannot do that, that's kind of like immediately out of the running for viable military service. So those are things to think about. Let's see. How many AR-15 rifles do you think are in American homes? I wouldn't be surprised if it was over 20 million. It could be close to that. It's hard to tell. If you were to, ask every gun manufacturer from Colt, who's been making AR-15s since the beginning, Armalite, Bushmaster, DPMS, Spikes Tactical, Air Precision, Smith & Wesson, like every company ever that makes AR-15s, how many they've made and sold. You're still not accounting for the 80% guys. You're not accounting for all the companies that they'll make complete rifles, but they also sell stripped lowers as well. How many guys have done 3D printing, 80% stuff? The list goes on. So it's really hard to gauge how many AR-15s are out there in civilian hands or American homes, but it's definitely probably in the millions. I'd probably say at least 10 to 15 million. That would be a pretty confident guess for me. But I think being in the millions at this point, that should be enough to qualify it as something that's in common use as per the Heller decision. So at the end of the day, I think that's kind of what we're looking at with that. Let's see. I'm still in the process of watching your recent almanac, and I'm enjoying it, like the image in the background as well. Yeah, that's actually a pretty rare painting of the signing of the Constitution. So if you reverse Google image search that, you'll see the artist and the circumstances for that. But thanks. I'm glad you like the almanac. I figured I needed to get that out before we head into January, and even before I did this Q&A. We're talking about Almanac number 7, my podcast format, where that one was focused around the proposed gun control measures of the Biden-Harris campaign. You can go to joebiden.com, check out their website, and they have like their gun safety tab that you can click on. And it's a pretty stout, serious list of everything they want to do when it comes to gun control or gun legislation or assault weapons bans. So That almanac, it was a little bit long, so I apologize for the length, but at the same time, there was a lot of points. There was a lot of stuff in there, and it was me reading it verbatim and then stopping to really analyze and discuss what would this actually mean on the ground level. If this actually did get passed, what would that look like? So at the end of the day, a little bit long. It came in just about 3 hours, over 3 hours. But for those who kind of want to know what's coming around the corner at some point eventually, that is everything that is proposed by the Biden-Harris campaign or by the incoming Biden administration of what he wants to do with gun control, gun legislation, changing gun laws, assault weapons bans, all of that. Now, in the video, I also talked about any politician can put all these really nice, cool ideas on their website of things they'd like to do, but of course, it's reliant upon Congress and passing something through the House and the Senate, the same version of the bill that they agree on, and then getting to the point where it actually becomes law. And even after it's became law, how much participation rate or compliance is actually going to be seen in this country? Not a lot. And what kind of constitutional or judicial scrutiny is it going to face when the lawsuits inevitably show up and it's going before circuit courts or the Supreme Court? So that discussion was also part of that as well. So if you guys have a grip of time and you want to kind of see what the Biden plan is on guns, and then my breakdown on what it would actually look like if it got passed, and then how likely is it to get passed and what would it actually mean, that's on my recent almanac that I just put up the other day. So again, I apologize, a little bit long, but when we're talking about legal stuff, sometimes it gets a little dry, but at the same time, it's very important. So that's out there for you guys. Let's see. Do you watch a channel called Funker 350? Watch a video before soldiers firing a saw. Yeah, so Funker, I think it's 530. I'm not sure. That is, I think it's a group of Canadians and Americans that accumulate helmet cam footage, combat footage, and things like that. So mainly global war on terrorism or the recent wars since 9/11, where it's more likely there's firsthand footage or helmet cam footage of those things. Usually when something's posted, that's years after that combat was actually in effect or happening. So that's either to protect the identity of whoever was filming it with this helmet cam versus the people in the video. Yeah, you can see a lot of stuff there. I've got just gigabytes of helmet cam from Afghanistan and Iraq. Most of it was kind of whatever, nothing crazy like that. And plus, on the Funker channel, you'll see combat footage that maybe the guy has hours of helmet cam where nothing was really going on. And then just that 5 to 10 minutes that you see uploaded in the form of a video on their channel. That's like just that one moment where here it is, but just hours of just stuff that was not actually going on. So that's kind of a side note. I've talked a little bit about that in the past. But any of you guys who are just joining, I can see the numbers going up. You can also just let me know if you can hear me right. That would help out a lot, just making sure. I'm sure it's just fine. Do I like the M249 squad automatic weapon? I like it a lot more now than I did when I was in the Army. The M249 saws that we had, these were guns that were 20, 25 years old by that point. They had gone through a number of MWOs or resets or upgrades at depot level. Starting life as the long-barreled fixed stock M249 from the 80s, moving into paratrooper stock, shorter barrel, hydraulic buffers, things like that. Bottom line is M249 kind of has a service life. It has a shelf life. It's a stamped steel receiver gun. It's a little bit susceptible to impact or abuse, where let's say if it's an M240 Bravo, which is my gold standard of a medium general purpose machine gun, or the PKM, kind of in the same vein, but 240 Bravo, sticking with that, That thing can deal with a lot of rounds fired. It can deal with being dropped, falling over, getting dragged through the mud and the gravel, a very high firing schedule. That thing can deal with that, getting rusted out a little bit, not being maintained, getting neglected. That thing can survive pretty well. So the M249 is not really up to that same level of abuse. It's not going to be able to deal with as much. Stamp steel receiver, that thing rusts like crazy if you don't keep after it, especially after it rained or a really humid environment. I've seen an M249 get deadlined by a dude who had it slung and one end of the sling just ripped and gave out, and it just started to tumble. And just from waist height, landing on gravel and hitting just on the back end, it torqued the receiver. And that gun was completely deadlined. The bolt raceway, it was binding up. It wasn't good anymore. Granted, that gun had been through a lot of damage already, but at the same time, M249 saw when it's brand new, when it's well maintained and cleaned and lubricated, shooting quality ammo that it needs, M249 is outstanding. But when it actually deals with years and years of abuse and neglect and use, M249 is not able to really, in the long term, deal with all of that. So the M249s we had, they were kind of jam-o-matics. You'd be surprised if you can get through 30 rounds just hanging on the trigger if you wanted to, without a jam or some kind of problem. The M249 that we have, it's a crowd pleaser. Customers love it because, and I love it too because it's reliable. It's like, holy shit, here's what the M249 should be when it's not been dragged through the mud and dropped and beat up over 20 years, issued to 30 guys over this time. And so M249, not my favorite. I'd like the one we have, but it's not my favorite. If you have one that's brand new and it's well maintained and you're doing the best you can to limit dropping it or having issues with it and causing undue wear, it's going to be a pretty good weapon system. Other than that, the mag port where it's supposed to take M4 or M16 magazines through the side if you don't have belts is a great idea in theory, but in practice, not very reliable. Shooting it that way, you kind of have to push the magazine forward towards the muzzle, and even then, that's you're helping cater the presentation angle of those rounds going into the chamber. But the rate of fire on that thing, and the fact it's an open bolt and how it's trying to strip those rounds. The magazine, most magazines, especially if that spring has some wear on it, it's just not going to keep up with that rate of fire and successfully present rounds. So M249, I prefer the 240 Bravo. Knights Armament came out with, they call it their LAMG, their light assault machine gun. Basically a modern take on the Stoner 63 pattern, or at least conceptual design. And something like that I would be much more interested in terms of testing it, checking it out, looking at it, compared to dealing with an M249. Let's just put it that way. Let's see. You're going to upload some of your cam footage if you have it. I think I might, but it's just going to be the mild stuff. Nothing too crazy, maybe. But I don't know. I don't really delve into it. I don't really go back and look at any of my helmet cam stuff. I just don't. So maybe, but we'll see. Lancaster's here. What's good, bro? I hear you good on my side. Yeah, everything's going pretty well, man. Work is busy. Lots of gun repairs. There's only so many armorers or gunsmiths in the country, and the gunsmiths or people who work on guns and can repair guns is about here. The demand for that kind of service is like up here. Same thing with competent quality firearms instruction and instructors versus how many people want quality, competent firearms instruction right now. So when you're in an industry or business where, the demand is so huge and the supply is only so much, guaranteed paycheck, hours, work, everything. So That could change with, the new administration coming in. Trump administration early on declared that the gun industry, gun shops, firearms related business, everything that is an essential industry. So wouldn't be surprised next month or at some point if that is deemed a non-essential industry, and then it could flatline. So who knows at that point? Let's see. Do you think 7.62 by 51 does better in a squad automatic weapon than a 5.56? I imagine the more firepower, the better when it comes to these types of guns. I think you can have a competent and capable 5.56 belt fed. My ideal squad automatic weapon would be a belt fed open bolt 5.56. If assuming everyone else has 5.56, if we adopt the 6mm range caliber that 6 Sauer is working on, or some of these other companies, of let's say 6 Sauer wins the contract for the new Army rifle, and now this is the new round and we're going to push it through NATO, and now this is a new NATO round and everyone has this 6.8 or 6mm cartridge, then having an open bolt machine gun chambered in that. But whatever it is, I think at least current example, having a squad automatic weapon, I think it should always be a belt fed open bolt 5.56. Unless we move to like some cool 6.8 caliber and that's the thing now, then it should be a 6.8 belt fed open bolt machine gun. And again, referencing the Knights Armament LAMG, that's something that's interesting to me. It's just a modern take on the Stoner 63 platform with some modern upgrades, modern metallurgy and design factors. So that to me would probably be ideal. I've never held one. I've just seen the testing and the data on it so far. And it's been out for several years now, just as a prototype gun. I think they have a couple contracts here or there, but I'd like to see something like that replace the 249. But if we're moving to a different caliber, just make it in that caliber. But that's what I would prefer. Don't necessarily need 7.62 NATO to do that job. 7.62 NATO, now you're moving into a platoon support weapon or something that can support troop movement at longer distances with a better beaten zone that's more effective at greater distances. At that point, 7.62 NATO versus you have a squad of dudes and one or two of them have something like a saw, that would be better in 5.56 or whatever caliber the riflemen are carrying. 7.62 NATO, that's good for having a dude like me just hoof it around to be kind of a bigger support role or put it on a vehicle. So yeah, totally 5.56 or whatever caliber it is totally works for that. What's my favorite firearms company? I can't really say one over any other. I've got some that I really like. I like Bravo Company USA or BCM. If you look at Paul Bothoni and the founder of the company and the dude who runs the company, his heart is in it for the right reasons. He makes a product that he just wants it to work out of the box. No break-in period needed, no cleaning or inspection. Like, bring it out of the box and shoot it and you're good. And durable, dependable stuff that can work for someone overseas, someone in law enforcement, concerned, citizen that wants self-defense and have something reliable. So I think that's awesome. Sons of Liberty Gunworks, that's another company I respect a lot in terms of how they started, why they started, and the kind of equipment they make. Their warranty is probably the most ridiculous warranty in the industry, in a good way, that for any reason, if you have any issues, send it. They'll just for free replace it, repair it, send it back, no questions asked. So that's another company I like a lot. Believe it or not, High Point is a company I at least respect why they got started, why they do what they do to this day. I may absolutely hate their product, especially their pistols, but at least why they got into business, which is everyone deserves a Second Amendment, but not everyone is a millionaire. Let's make affordable guns for the average person, especially if finances are kind of an issue. They still have a Second Amendment right. So let's make guns to cater to that part of the market, because everyone deserves a Second Amendment. So different companies I like, Lewis Machine and Tool, Carl Lewis over there has been working with the U.S. military, the SOCOM community, and Crane and everything, putting out, kind of pushing the envelope on the original M16 and M4 design. And how can we do this better? Let's make guns that they're asking for, that are built to a quality standard that is going to make sense. So these are some of the companies that I respect. And if you notice, it's not just about the product, but it's about the characters involved and why they do what they do, is perhaps more important to the product almost itself. So those are just some examples of companies that I really like. Let's see. But nothing keeps the enemy's heads down like 7.62 by 51. Just all the ammo is heavy to carry. Yeah, I mean, I think as long as enemies' heads are down, in that we're providing a sonic crack, we're making it obviously abundant that they are getting hit by a beaten zone of something, they may not stop and be like, hey, is that a 240 that's shooting at us from 400 meters away? Or is that a 249? That's not how that works. Like, as long as things are happening to suppress, to engage, or allow for movement or maneuver, and allow for things to happen, pinning them down, or, doing what you got to do. 7.62 NATO, I don't see it better for that purpose as much as I see it better, obviously, at, cover penetration, busting through walls or vehicles. 5.56, especially the M855 Alpha 1, the brown tip round, that is no slouch. But compared to the same load, the M80 Alpha 1, basically the brown tip of 7.62 NATO, yeah, of course, 7.62 NATO is going to have more cover penetration, more capabilities, also more distance, more range. But depending on the engagement distance, no one's going to peek up and try to identify, hey, am I getting shot at, like, with this crazy amount of fire from a 249 or a 240? In that role, no one's going to care at that point. They're just going to know they're getting shot at. But yeah, 7.62 cover penetration and distance are definitely the winning advantages there. But in terms of suppressing or keeping heads down, you could do that with an M4 if you put that thing really sturdy on auto or semi-auto and just start really blasting aimed and controlled shots, probably like at least rapid or successive fire. So, but I know what you mean. Like, yeah, obviously 7.62 NATO has cover penetration and distance that 5.56 will not have. But just from a basic suppression, keeping heads down point of view, depending on engagement distance, I don't think anyone's going to stand up and be like, hey, what is that? It's all bad for them. So that's my thoughts on that. I'm glad the firearms industry was declared essential. People are finally seeing the importance of the Second Amendment. I mean, I've seen a lot of people that, they are first-time gun buyers. Maybe they weren't against guns at all, but they weren't like for guns. They were just hanging out, and now they're buying a gun for the first time. I had one woman that I did a lesson with on the range like 4 or 5 months ago that she had to call the cops multiple times at her house that she owned and lived in. It was a bad part of town, lots of gang and drug activity up there. Finally, by the third time, and the cops showed up and like, hey, you live by yourself here in this house in this part of town. The first advice they gave her was, yeah, you need to look at moving. Like, if you can rent another house. And she's like, no, I own this house. Like, I'm kind of stuck here for the foreseeable future. And then the cop was like, oh, you need a gun. You don't have a gun. You need a gun, because I don't want to come back here for a fourth time. And that time when I come back, you're just dead. Like, I don't want that for you. So probably having a gun, living by yourself in this kind of neighborhood with everything going on, you probably need a gun. Like, I really hope you do that, because the next time I come out here, I don't want to just take photos of your body and submit it to the detectives and have them come out, you know. So there's people like that that are starting to discover, like, hey, you know, rape and murder is really bad, and I don't have an effective way of stopping that from happening to me in the moment. So maybe I should figure some other alternative out besides grabbing a phone and waiting 20 minutes or whatever it's going to be for someone to get to me. We've had people that, you know, maybe I've seen a couple personal testimonies of them calling the police, and the dispatcher on the other line is like, hey, we've let them know they're in the middle of all these other calls that are also important, and just stay with me on the line. But this could take a minute. Okay. And finally, police showing up. Maybe it's a pretty spread out county. Police or sheriffs are showing up finally, like 45 minutes later. It's already done. It's over. And thankfully they survived it. And they're like, okay, that was kind of a wake up call that, yeah, I've got this cool guy phone number I can call. There's supposed to be cops that are supposed to help me if they're not being defunded or we don't need them at all. Maybe I should actually like care about not having something bad happen to me in my home. Definitely an increased, you know, there's a lot more people now involved with the Second Amendment, and I'm happy to see it. And there's a lot of them that are seeking training. They want to get trained. They're getting trained. But I don't know. I've seen on a couple occasions, at least in a way, they're willing to admit it of, you know, hey, I was against guns before this. I was all about assault weapons bans, and I'm still not like the guns are not still my favorite thing ever. But I've identified, I never thought I would be here, but I want to be a gun owner. I want to get a gun. The more people that are tapping into their Second Amendment, the more people that are starting to get it, or they already got it, and that's why they're tapping into it. So overall, I think it's a positive thing. And again, provided the training is there, and I've seen a lot of first-time gun buyers, the people who were previously against guns, they're still not like a big fan of guns, but they're buying one. They're also pretty adamant about signing up for a training class whenever the next available one is for them, depending what they need. So these are all good things, I think. Later is better than never. And trying to buy a gun right now, I've got pretty decent kind of up and down selection of handguns and ARs and defensive shotguns that I could sell someone, but the immediate challenge becomes ammo. I don't have any ammo that anybody would want unless you have a 10 millimeter. So it's kind of, you know, it's like, I'm glad you made this decision, but you know, we're like 9 months too late here to be picky about what kind of guns I can show you to buy. And even if I can sell you something you seem to like or shoot okay with, I don't have any ammo at all. You're going to have to try to find it because we are way too late to be picky about this shit. Let's see. And then going back to that question, firearms for now under the Trump administration were deemed an essential industry, but again, with the Obama or the Biden administration coming in next month, that could also change. So just going to depend on what happens, what's going on with that. Let's see. You should make a video to talk about machine gun theory. I've thought about it, but there's honestly, it wouldn't really have as much practical application for civilians as much. I don't think the video would get a lot of views, and machine gunners or those who really have the weapons and the need to employ that kind of knowledge with the weapons that they're doing, they already have actual courses for that. We had MIGLIC in the Army, Machine Gun Leaders Course. You know, they're going to get those kinds of range days where you're sitting behind a belt-fed weapon, engaging targets out to 800 meters and really understanding what's going on and seeing it and experiencing it for yourself, getting that proper instruction, especially from experienced machine gunners. So I guess it would just be a video about informational knowledge. Would it apply to most people watching the video? Probably not. There's also some really good books and field manuals or training circulars, or TMs, training manuals regarding machine gun theory. So those who really have the weapons and the need for it, and they're going to machine gun ranges, they're about to deploy or whatever it is, they're already getting that for the most part. And those who would stumble across the video, I don't know how many people would actually be in a position to employ the knowledge. And I don't know. I'm not opposed to it. I just don't see it as a video that very many people would want to watch. And let's say it could be something I might be willing to do, but we'll see about it. What do you think of Knight's Armory? It's Knight's Armament. Really like the name of that company. So Knight's Armament, started by Reed Knight. One of those rare companies that actually has personal interface with Eugene Stoner himself. So Knight's Armament came out with the SR-15, the Stoner rifle model 15. So that was moving into if Eugene Stoner could make all the decisions or most of the decisions on the gun that he wanted, plus Reed Knight and the modern military requests on that gun, this is what it's going to be. Specifically, though, the SR-25, that was a case where Reed Knight and Knight's Armament worked with the man himself, Eugene Stoner, of like, hey, if we have the manufacturing, the technological design, and the quality, you have the brainchild, and this is your design. Like, if in the 90s, right now in the modern day, if you want to make an AR-10, what is it going to be? And Eugene Stoner laid it out, and it came out the SR-25. So that's AR-10 plus AR-15 kind of blended, and everything Stoner wanted it to be. Bam, SR-25, which later became actually used in the form of the SR-25, later became officially adopted with some other changes as the M110 SAS. But Knight's Armament, anyway, they do have that street cred. Reed Knight himself has a pretty outstanding collection of guns, personal collection. They've made some breakthrough stuff like the Riz and the Raz rail that's still standard issue to this day, quad rail on M4s and M16s. They've come up with other stuff, other weapon systems. Quality is outstanding. Their barrels are outstanding as well. Only downside about Knight's Armament that I don't like is they're kind of like Colt, where they have what I call the cool guy tax, where it's like, hey, if you want our product, there's only one Knight's Armament. We are the one and only. And if you want our products, you're going to pay for it. So maybe other companies would retail a product for $2,000 based on production cost and everything. Knight's Armament may retail it for $2,500, and that extra on top is like, hey, that's the cool guy tax. If you want our stuff and our logo on the side of your gun, you want our quality, you want our name brand, you want to be cool and tactical and have our product, you're going to pay for it, and we're going to charge extra, and we know you're going to pay it because you want it, kind of thing. So that's the only downside I have about Knights, but I do think they've had some really good street cred, and they also have some really good designs, and for the most part, pretty good quality. So that's the only issue I have, cool guy tax, with them. Let's see. How many machine guns would you want to own? I know you love the 240. I mean, I'd love to own as many as I could. The 240 would be a top choice. I'd love to have a 1918 BAR. That would always be cool. The gun was a little bit obsolescent moving into World War II by that time, but it's what we had, so we ran with it. The Belgians, I think, actually came out with the best version of a BAR with the changes they made for their government service. World War II BAR sucked in terms of the bipod, some other things about it, but just having one would just be awesome. Thompson submachine gun, that'd be cool. Having a full auto AR lower, that would be cool. A lot of things that'd be cool, but I don't know if I'll personally own any transferables. I mean, if I was made of money and I could do it, I'd probably have at least 10 machine guns, but it's very cost prohibitive for sure. Let's see. You can imagine the supersonic crap a bullet makes downrange is horrifying. It's we had a range in Louisiana where it was not necessary. It was kind of getting set up. I'm not going to mention their name because they're still in business and they're doing a great job now. But when we got back from Iraq, they started building up more kind of a newer range in the area, and their pistol range was actually just, even from the firing line, was down range compared to the rifle range next to it. And they had a berm they made, but they really needed some more higher something separating it. So you could be on the pistol range either shooting or changing your targets, and you would hear crack, like the snap of dudes down below next to you on the rifle range, where you were in front of the muzzle, just kind of away with this kind of berm separating you. And I never liked to shoot there, not just for the basic kind of safety component that I wasn't too happy about. The last time I saw that range before I left Louisiana, they had done a great job. They had got more money and built it better to where it needed to be. But it's definitely not something you enjoy, whether you've been, overseas or military combat or not. Like, supersonic crack is not something you want to deal with, because that lets you know, like, hey, stuff is happening near or around me, and that bullet is still supersonic, and it's got a very distinctive sound. Let's see. In your almanac, you were pointing out that they would have to really raise taxes to try to enforce the gun laws. And I said that Democrats and high taxes go together like peanut butter and jelly. Generally, yeah, that moves into more fiscal stuff. I've seen maybe not necessarily liberals, but the left, and a lot of times the Democratic Party, all three of those things being different. But I've seen there's kind of this willingness to spend either other people's money, taxpayer money, or money we don't even have and we would have to borrow. Total willingness to do that if the cause seems urgent or emotionally charged enough that we need to do this and I want to take credit for doing this. And whereas more, whether it's Republican, conservative, or those on the right, again, all three different things, people in those camps tend to be, okay, let's see how much money we have to play with. Let's try to cut the fat on this and see what really needs money in a way that can be viable, and not just like slap a Band-Aid on it with money we don't even have, or taxpayer funds, and just throw money at the problem. And of course, if you're trying to pay for things, taxes got to go up, or you have to borrow money. And I am not an economist, so I'm not really my lane to be able to really accurately lay that out and be in a position to be like, oh, well, I know all the answers. Let me explain it to you. I'm not an economist, but I know a thing or two about behavior patterns, and that does seem to be the case, depending on who's in office. So, but then again, President Trump, at least on paper, Republican, has exploded the national debt beyond any president before him. I think combined, actually, from Washington to Obama. I don't think any president, all of that combined, we never had the deficit we have today. So I was kind of hoping things would be a little bit more fiscal under the Trump administration, at least on a grand scheme of things, but didn't happen. So I guess we'll have to see what happens. Let's see. You could do a video on how to clear your house or something along those lines. Actually, interesting timing. Just was filming prior to getting ready to do the live stream tonight. Was just kind of working on about halfway through it. It's a home defense video that you guys might enjoy. You guys are going to see some photos. You're going to see some demonstrations and things. But it's going to be a two-part segment, and it's not going to be necessarily what you think. Most people I encounter or have encountered, when the discussion moves to home defense, the first thing they start talking about is, oh, I have this gun, I have that gun, and this is by my bedside. And this is, for me, the discussion of home defense doesn't even start with guns. I like to move it out and start moving the picture in to finally focus on you and weapons, or you and guns. So conversation talking about how do we make our home less susceptible or less of an easy target For those who would case the neighborhood and actually want to hit our house, what things can we do from outside appearances that would kind of make it look like a hardened structure or not as soft of a target? Maybe they'll just move on, pick another house, and then start moving into windows and doors, garage door and sliding door. Those are the two main by the numbers. That is, if your house is going to get broken into by the numbers, it's usually garage door or the glass sliding door moving out to the backyard or the patio. Those are two very high traffic areas. Moving into how do we fortify our doors, fortify our windows, alarm systems, what things can we be doing from dogs to everything else. So it's going to be a two-part home defense. Part one is going to be about how do we make our home less of a target, and if someone still was committed of moving in or trying to do something, what kind of barricades or frustration points or friction points or things can we put in the way to either subvert that attempt or buy us more time. And then, things about the home, what we can do. And then part two will be about the guns, which also might be a little surprising for a lot of people. So actually just kind of working through that. Hopefully in the next week or less, we can get that video up. But might be interesting to see that. So in terms of clearing the house and stuff, there's plenty of cool guys with a lot more experience than you or I that could showcase, Battle Drill 1 Alpha and everything else in your own home. But primarily my home defense video, starting off with part one, it's going to be about working outside, moving in, and everything you can do about the house to improve your situation. And then part two will actually be about the guns. So look out for that. Part one, hopefully in the next week or so. Also working with getting a videographer on board. So if I have someone filming and editing and uploading the videos, that's going to greatly increase the content, because right now it's pretty much a one-man show of filming everything, editing everything, putting it all together, and then uploading it. But looking at bringing on another member of the team to actually do that piece. And if that kind of works out, comes together, then you guys are going to see a lot more content. It's going to be a lot easier. Okay, let's see. Battle Bean, what's up? What's up, bro? Where in Iraq was you at? So we did everything from flying into Q West or Kiara West, Mosul and Erbil, flew up to Camp Swift in Kurdistan, down to Hawija, Old Fob Spiker, down on the side of Tampa, drove Tampa a decent amount of times. I think our platoon had the most amount of miles on the road than any other element in the whole brigade. By the time we were done, lots of time on Tampa, lots of time driving around up to Mosul. We actually fractured. So Lancaster, you guys see in the chat, part of 1st Platoon, they went to Al Qaim, which was a real peach of a place, West Desert area. Never made it to Baghdad or anywhere terribly down there south. But my first deployment in Afghanistan, which Lancaster was also part of, that was very static. We pretty much stayed in the same place pretty much the whole time. Versus Iraq, it was like a traveling circus as the ISIS fight was going, and they were losing ground, and we were taking more towns and cities, physically taking real estate, actual front lines of, hey, this is ISIS territory, and everything past you're about to drive, all bets are off. But it was a traveling circus as that ISIS fight was kind of compressing to the west, or I guess the way you guys are viewing it, to the west of Iraq. Moving around as the mission dictated. Also spent a little spell of time in Haditha at the Haditha Dam down there outside Haditha proper. That was kind of weirdo zone, working with the NSW guys. So kind of a sprinkling of a lot of things in Iraq, but never made it to Hajaf or Fallujah or anywhere down south, Ramadi or Baghdad. None of that stuff, but mainly west, moving into north kind of area of it is where we were, depending on time frame, at what was going on and where we were at in the ISIS fight at that time. Let's see, do you have any rifles near you right now? Not near me, just got 2 pistols. Yeah, Yeah, the closest thing I have is going to be just I have a whole room of my house devoted to guns and ammo. So just everything that's in there. Closest thing to me is probably an AR-15 in the next room over. Let's see. See, man, you was at Fort Polk. Ew, nasty. Yeah, Fort Polk was probably 0 out of 10. Would not recommend Fort Polk, Louisiana. I didn't even know that Army base, that we had a base out. I didn't even know that existed until I popped on orders after infantry OSET that I was going there. At Fort Polk, Louisiana, you pretty much got two main derivatives. You have 509th. Those are Geronimo. Those are the dedicated role players, OPFOR, that run the JRTC, or the Joint Rotational Training Center there. The box, as we will call it, up at North Fort. And then option 2, which is what I was part of, was at the time 410. We got reflagged to 310, or 3rd Brigade, 10th Mountain Division. Kind of the redheaded stepchild of 10th Mountain Division, which is based up at Fort Drum, Waterton, New York, up there, where they had 1st and 2nd Brigade. Nasty Swamp Mountain down in Louisiana. We were 3rd Brigade, 10th Mountain down there. Fort Polk itself, it's kind of a truck stop town. Honestly, the town would not really be a thing if it wasn't for Fort Polk. It is, to my knowledge, the smallest in terms of personnel count installation that the U.S. Army has stateside, or CONUS. Yeah, it was just a real interesting experience. Like, the biggest thing in town was Walmart. And I remember when we were in Afghanistan, some of my buddies that were 509th, or some other guys back in the rear, they were like, "Hey man, we're getting a Chili's. We got a Chili's coming in on the highway, 171 highway." And that was like the big deal. While we were in Afghanistan, we had like 3 or 4 months left, getting all this news that they were finalizing putting in a Chili's restaurant in town. And that was like the big deal. And honestly, it kind of was. You had Wagon Masters Steakhouse, basically a Louisiana knockoff Texas Roadhouse kind of venue that was pretty okay next to Walmart, or in front of it. You could go down the Der Ritter, which sort of had some stuff. Cecil's down there, pretty good restaurant, historic stuff. They had the hanging jail, if you guys are interested in museums or historic stuff and weird stuff. But pretty much, if you wanted to go anywhere, you had to drive at least an hour in any direction to get somewhere you wanted to be. Alexandria, that was kind of the biggest nearby town. That's where the airport, little tiny broom closet of an airport, was. Somewhat civilization there, not a lot. You could go down to Lake Charles, which there was McNeese University was down there. Kind of an interesting town, a little bit more, but that was about 2.5 hour drive. A lot of guys, we'd go to Texas. So you could tap in the Houston area, Huntsville, which again is not much either, but Dallas, if you're willing to drive a little bit more, Austin or San Antonio. These were at least within reach, depending on how many days of leave you had or what kind of DA-31 you put in for. Bottom line, Fort Polk, I think there's almost like this, and I'm joking halfway when I say this, almost this conspiracy of, let's put all these guys here, and everything is so miserable, between super hot, super humid, crazy huge cockroaches and mosquitoes, alligators in the river systems and streams. Like, everything is just awful, to the point that they're looking forward to the next deployment. Like, I was looking forward to going to Afghanistan and going to Iraq. I was looking forward. I was like, when do we leave to get us the hell out of this place? Anytime you go away for schools, whether it was like VLC or I went to RSLIC, back to Fort Benning, the Recon Leaders and Surveillance course. Anytime you could get away for whatever reason, you were happy to do that. So guys were signing up for courses. Just, I don't give a shit. Send me. I don't care if it's field sanitation course, TOTS. I don't care. Just get me out of here. It is what you made it. One downside about leaving Fort Polk, the one thing I miss, or the one thing that I was not happy leaving was the fact that I had 3 really good gun ranges within 20 minutes of my house on base. So I had the post range, the MWR range on post was like 5 minutes from my house in the Dogwood Terrace community there. We had White Feather range. That's Max's gun repair. Like he had his own range that went out to, I think it was 800 yards, and then a decent pistol segment. And then there was Bullseye range. So depending on what video I was going to shoot or what training I wanted to focus on, rifle, pistol, or shotgun, I could do long range rifle, pistol, plenty of steel targets for pistol, skeet and trap and 5 stand. I had 3 really good, competent, relatively low cost, easily accessible gun ranges, all outdoor, within like a 20-mile radius like a 20-minute radius within my house on base. So that's the only thing I miss about Louisiana. And the rest of it was just straight up garbage. Not going to lie. All right. So see some questions here. Let's see, on a scale 1 to 10, how patriotic are you? Does the military inspire patriotism? People love this country. It's just that the news only shows bad things. I think I'll just answer that with just saying, to me, patriotism is not a diehard, unquestionable dedication to your government. That's not patriotism. Patriotism is loving your country. My form of patriotism is being very, or at least understanding the Disneyland that we have here, knowing we have problems. We have not always been in the right. We've done some really awful shit in our history. We've also done some really outstanding things, and we still are in our history. Quality of living, even you look at our homeless population or people living on the struggle just below the poverty line. We need to continue to improve that. That's not me saying, oh, well, just let's forget about it. I'm just saying, if you look at that versus how are people living the worst of the worst off, or even relatively by their standards doing okay, we still have a lot of great things to be thankful for here. So that's just my form of patriotism. I think it is a country, worth all this effort and worth all this struggle to continue to serve. I think as an American, our purpose is to serve and to help others. So if you're not doing that, you're fucked up in one way or another, whether it's helping your friends or family, helping your community, trying to do something good. National service, if and when it's going to fit or be applicable to your personality and character traits, and it's something you want to do. That's my form of patriotism. I also acknowledge, again, that we have really bad moments in our past, really bad decisions, really awful things that we did, either here in the United States or abroad as a country. But I also understand that's not exclusive to just America. Find me the country that has not done horrible, awful things as well. And that's not to excuse it. That's just to have some context of like, look, we're not perfect, just like no one else, but we're doing things that no one else is doing or has done. And this is my home. I'm proud of it. Don't apologize for it. And that's my form of patriotism. Again, you can totally get down on and love on your country. Doesn't mean you have to like whoever's the president is at any given moment or the government itself. True act of patriotism is, to me, serving others and trying to improve this thing rather than just walk away and ditch it. So that's just me. Let's keep going. Are you still planning your constitutional almanac in a modern AR-15 explained video? I am. We've been working a lot of hours at the gun shop and gun range. Lots of other stuff going on. So trying to fit it all in a schedule, getting ready for the holidays too. It's coming out, still in the works. Some videos will take me weeks of working on it here or working on it there, devoting segments of time to build it up. So it is coming. There's just other videos I've got in the works right now, trying to get it all finished up. Let's see. Ain't shit around Polk, but the units are pretty good there. Yeah, and I've had people that I was stationed at Fort Polk with that they're like, man, I can't wait to leave this place. I'm going to PCS or change their duty station to somewhere else. And they do it. And then once they get there, they're like, man, I miss Fort Polk, not for the state or the area, but just for the unit and the guys. It was okay. It's all give and take. Moving on. You hating on Louisiana from Pew Pew into Crutch. Okay. I'm not hating on Louisiana. I just there were elements of it that actually were cool. Miss Texas and I, years ago, one of the last things I did, we went down outside Baton Rouge and what's the other city? I can't. It's a college town. Lots of artistic people there, which I guess could be a lot of cities in Louisiana. But we went on one of the airboat rides, which was pretty solid. Our boat captain / tour guide was like the most Cajun man in the world. And it was really cool to see the gators and actually see like the Spanish moss and the swamp and everything. So there was really cool stuff. Been to New Orleans? Absolutely no. It's not a city I'd want to live in. Maybe it's cool for a trip, but everyone's going to be different. I'm not hating on Louisiana. I would never predict a scenario in which I'd ever live there again. Let's just put it that way. I also hate humidity a lot, which is why I prefer the West. But you stay closer to NOLA, so northern Louisiana. Yeah, still, I don't know, man. Been hanging out up there. I guess, well, Shreveport still, it's not totally north, but I was stationed there for just over 4.5 years, interrupted by 25 months worth of deployment time not being there. So just, I guess you could say at least 2.5 years of solidly living there. I think I'm good. Not going to say I wouldn't visit, but I definitely would not live there again. Let's see. How loud is the bullet crack from rifle at long distance? I hear it on YouTube, I'm sure. That kind of stuff is loud, but it also depends on the cartridge. And past a certain point, the bullet will become super or subsonic. So maybe let's just use M4 14.5 inch 5.56 barrel. After a certain point, that bullet, it starts life as supersonic, but after a certain point, it's going to transition out of being faster than the speed of sound, and that's where the crack goes away. And that's when you're going to hear more of the impacts than you are a sonic crack, because there is none at that point. So just a lot of depending factors there. But it's still pretty relatively loud. Basic training, one thing, it was Nick at Night, or just one of the things we did, Infantry OSA, is they had 240s with live ammo, and they had the traverse and elevation totally locked and padlocked down. And you started in the trenches, you get the green light, and like all of you guys, like 100 at a time, or maybe it's like 70 at a time, would climb over the trench and crawl through the mud and the barbed wire in the darkness of night, and they were just shooting live ammo over your heads. And that was to kind of get you accustomed to that crack and see the tracers flying over your head. And then when you'd see the flares would come up and illuminate everything, that you would just stop and just lay there until the flare goes away, and then you keep crawling just to get out of that mess. I actually thought that was fun. Like it was like this weird World War I kind of scenario, and you knew that live rounds were going over your head, and you're just digging through with your rifle, just trying to get through this thing. And I remember there's a huge sandy puddle, and I'm trying to crawl through it. Huge flare goes up. I'm just like sitting in there. I thought it was fun. Some people are a little terrified of it, but you definitely heard the crack. It was very loud, on top of the fact that you had like 3 or 4 240s firing. They were taking turns. They were talking the guns to conserve ammo, but the fact they were shooting and you could still hear the crack, it's pretty loud. Just as a root basic example, that if you join the infantry in the Army, you're definitely going to get to experience that. And you'll that's at least a reference point some people might have. Let's see. How tall am I? I used to be 6'2". Had some back issues and things that happened while I was in the Army. And I think too, just carrying like 120 pounds on your back, doing that on different rucks or on Mish or whatever. I'm now 6'1" after 5 years of that. So my spine is kind of compressed. But there was a time I used to be 6'2". At least I can say that. But no, currently 6'1". Let's see. I'm gonna stay here. Gonna take a quick break. Gonna get some more drink. If you guys want to take probably about 30 seconds, I'm gonna be fast. So if you guys make any adjustments, I'll be right back. All right, told you that'd be quick. In Louisiana, NOLA is best place to stay. 930 range yard or 930 yard range. FTS 2 hours away in Houma, and MCTA in Mississippi lets you shoot however you are. They're a good hunting and fish here with the race near Kenner. Hey man, everyone's gonna be different. Everyone's gonna have different priorities. I don't know. At the end of the day, Louisiana, there was different snapshots of it that I liked, but the overall experience of living there was not in line with what I prefer or want out of wherever I'm living. Gun laws were definitely great. Or at least, pretty suitable. So, but yeah, I don't know. Let's see. What do you think about Canadian gun rights? I think the American 2A is definitely unique. I'm not a total subject matter expert on Canadian gun laws. Outside of a couple things, I think it was a couple years ago, Vice, of all people, put out a dispatch or a video presentation on, I think they called it Armed and Reasonable Canadian Guns in Canada, or Canadian gun ownership, something like that, where it showcased the paperwork and the stuff you have to go through to actually legally own and possess only certain types of guns in Canada. Mainly at this point, longer barreled pistols and pump action shotguns, from what I understand. AR-15s were cool for a while till Justin Trudeau, their prime minister up there, I guess became a one-man parliament, their version of Congress, if you will, and just dictated that all AR-15s and things like that, or maybe it's semi-automatic rifles or shotguns, just is a no-go. So if anyone is from Canada or in Canada on the live stream, I'd love to see, if I'm right or wrong on that. The bottom line is, if I am interested in really awesome gun ownership laws, or in the case of the United States, a identified observance of a natural right to own, to keep and bear arms, then that's what I want. Canada's not really a top destination, let's put it that way, which is not, it's not to talk shit on it or anything. I know a couple dudes who came from Canada. There are, at least one of my civilian jobs, we worked with Canadians a lot, as part of our shipping and working out some logistics. They seemed to be really good people. The Canadians that I've seen or dealt with here, outstanding people from what I see, and also interested in owning guns. And it's just kind of a shame what is going on up there, I guess. So can't really speak on it. I have no problems, admittedly, out the gate saying, look, I'm not qualified to really answer these questions. So if anyone is from Canada, though, in the chat or at a future time, if you're watching this after this was live, go ahead and post up some stuff about Canadian gun laws. But I guess it's still kind of pending as we know it right now. What's your thoughts on T-Rex Arms products? I don't have a lot of personal experience with it, although I am trying to order some stuff from them. They actually have some HESCO level 3 armor, ceramic plates. Every now and then, seems like off and on every month, they'll put them up. Last I checked a couple days ago, they had them in stock. So I'm trying to order from them, but it's a HESCO product, not T-Rex Arms product. Don't really have a lot of time with them. Maybe this is me kind of being stuck in a military sense when it comes to items or parts or equipment that are going on or in guns. But I have older guns, my Mausers, Lee Enfields, my historic stuff that you guys have seen on the channel. And those are just collection pieces. I don't put them through hard use. I would never reasonably grab any of them to actually defend myself. But anything that I'm going to own, that I'm going to carry every day, that I'm going to take it to a pistol course. I'm going to do some training at Higgins Tactical this upcoming year. I'm going to do a video on that if I have their permission to film and do a review of their course, take a carbine course with them. Anything I'm going to have that I'm going to do a lot of training with and reasonably use to defend my life with, it needs to be at least at a quality that I could hand that pistol or hand that AR to the U.S. military, give it to a bunch of infantry, and this would be a successful service rifle or pistol for them. So all of that to say, I'm not, if the gun is not bomb proof and I have not obtained a quality standard I'm comfortable with for a very high round count and very long service life of abuse and use, I don't want to own it. I have no interest in owning it. If it's not up to a certain standard, I don't care. I don't want it. So when I select barrels, bolt carrier groups, triggers, even lower parts kits, if it's not a company that's building it to that kind of standard, I don't care. I'm not going to waste my money on it. With T-Rex Arms, a lot of guys seem to be happy with it. But I don't have any personal experience with their product line. So I'm not going to say they're negative. I'm not going to say they're positive. Really just anecdotal from people I know who seem to be happy with their stuff, but I don't have any personal testimony in it. Let's see. What do you think of North Carolina? Gun laws here aren't that bad, and North Carolina is definitely a military-friendly state. So I've spent time in North Carolina, definitely around Stanley County. Went to Camp McCall and did this thing called Robin Sage out there for 2 weeks. Been to Fort Bragg, did the FORSCOM marksmanship competition 2018 out there. I got to see Fayetteville, a little bit. One of my buddies, we were a gunner driver team on a vehicle. My first deployment, he was my driver. He's from North Carolina. He definitely had an accent that I guess would be like a stereotypical redneck, backwoods, mountain people kind of accent. But he also has a master's degree and was one of the smartest people I know. The town itself, the state itself, from Fayetteville to the other places, I thought it was pretty okay. but I don't have a lot of time in North Carolina. Actually, the only real time I've spent in North Carolina was in military training, so I don't really know the other parts of it. One of my roommates was from there. He was a pretty okay guy. But I don't know, got to spend more time. I actually have more time in South Carolina than I do in North Carolina. Yeah, Nova Scotia was heartbreaking from Carlos. Yeah, there's been a number of things. I remember dating back to not too far ago when Canada had the shooter that I guess it was their version of like the Tomb of the Unknowns, where they had a soldier on guard, and the dude killed that guy, went into the Parliament building threatening to do this, that, or the other thing. And they had a sergeant at arms of the Parliament building who was a former cop and had a gun, licensed, and that was kind of his purpose. And he took out the shooter before he could do horrible stuff. In an ideal world, you'd look at that as an example of, hey, guns in the right hands at the right time when it's happening, that's kind of a good thing. But they kind of took it the other way, and everything just kind of fell apart. Nova Scotia, from what I understand, that dude either had a cop car, uniform, was doing some serious stuff. It was a spree as opposed to an individual event. But I just reject the idea that one crazy, absolutely outstandingly just outlier circumstance of a really evil person that needs to dictate the natural, inalienable rights of literally everyone else. I reject that a lot. It's just the situation itself was a shame, and the Canadian government reaction to it was also a shame for everyone else. So, okay, let's see. I noticed that Canadian gun rights movements say similar things to American gun rights movements. They focus even more on property rights, though. It's unfortunate that they don't have a Second Amendment. Yeah, I mean, that's what distinguishes the Second Amendment in the American Constitution compared to any other country that I can think of. There's probably one or two where they've put it as as a right to have guns and be able to defend yourself. But pretty much every other country, if there is civilian gun ownership, it's either seriously limited or it's viewed as a privilege that can basically just be taken away whenever they decide it's not good anymore, and whatever arbitrary viewpoint they have. Australia, good example of that, where they used to have handguns and all kinds of stuff. They had a really bad shooting. I think it was in the 90s, and that's when they did the buyback program there, which hasn't really done anything. There's still plenty of guns in Australia. It's just legally, but also conceptually, philosophically, having that right to own guns and defend yourselves. That's one of those American things that you look around the world, even NATO partnered allied countries like Great Britain or the UK, Canada, Germany, that just doesn't exist. There still is private gun ownership. What stipulations are on it? What kind of guns can they have? How many flaming hoops do they have to jump through to access whatever they can access? Does it have to be kept at the gun range and simply used there only, or can they have it in their houses? That's the discernible difference between viewing it as a privilege only when we're cool with it versus, hey, this is a right and we can't touch it kind of thing. Or at least we're not supposed to be able to. Let's see. North Carolina better hold on the Second Amendment. In the Revolution, it was said of Mecklenburg County was a hornet's nest of rebellion. Yeah, North Carolina is probably one of those states that's going to turn blue, probably as time continues to go on. So hopefully North Carolina can retain. The challenge is it's probably going to come into a very Virginia kind of situation where you have a lot of freedom loving people out there, but you have just these urban centers in Virginia. It's Alexandria, DC, Virginia Beach, some Richmond, really up there towards DC, that it's so populated and densely packed. They all vote the same way. And they get to dictate to the rest of Virginia, everyone else, how things are going to be or supposed to be. North Carolina probably going to encounter that situation. I know there's Wilmington and some other stuff, so may not. I don't know. I guess we'll just see how long that'll last over there. The Alexanders of the Signers, Deck, Halifax resolves, and the Mecklenburg resolves are my kin. That's cool. Pretty awesome. Great-grandfather William Alexander First and Earl of Stirling, who chartered Nova Scotia and founded it. He's rolling in his grave. Let's see. Do you ever use hunting type ammo in your AR? Not really. There's going to be ballistic tip stuff, soft point stuff. AR-15 for me, and it's 5.56 chambering. Not ideally something I'd want to hunt with unless it's like coyote hunting or prairie dogs or varmint hunting, where we can do that on the 223, and it's probably going to be like an 18-inch 223 wild 1-in-8 twist kind of barrel. Mainly what I use is going to be just standard practice range stuff or some kind of defensive load. Like my preferred is the Mark 262 from Black Hills, 77 grain open tip match. That is, I think, probably one of the best cartridges ever made, or one of the best loads ever made for 5.56, especially if you're going from really short AR pistol or SBR barrels all the way out to the longest of the long 24-inch barrels. That load seems to do pretty well out of short and long or standard barrel length. Mainly focused on a lot of range time and potential need for defense. Hunting, anything that I would hunt out here in Utah, whether it's deer or elk or anything like that, definitely showing up with something else, not a 223, unless it was like survival situation. That's all I had. Soft points, expansion rounds have their good uses. Yeah. So that's, I mean, if we're trying to maximize the purposing of 5.56 or 223 for hunting, going to be a soft point ballistic tip kind of thing. See, did you see that video of Australia destroying 600,000 guns? It is horrible. USA would make that look like a joke. Yeah, I remember seeing this like old school NRA documentary / report on it when it was going down, showing, cutting guns in half and things like that. Yeah, I just wouldn't do that. My guns would not be part of that heap of guns being melted down or cut down. It's just not going to happen. But it's just, it sucks because that's one of the many drawbacks of gun registration is if you're in the 90s, they passed the legislation, they're going to have a mandatory gun buyback, and everything you own is registered with the Australian government. And you're facing serious prison time and felonies if you don't turn them in by the prescribed date line or the end date. They know you have them, and they know if you turned them in or not. And if you didn't, you're facing some serious consequences. So for them, they're kind of in a rock and a hard place. And I understand that. The culture is going to be different there, at least in America, without gun registration for most of the states. I mean, they can make some kind of plea like, hey, we've passed this law, come in and register your assault weapons or turn in these guns or these magazines or whatever. When Connecticut did that after Sandy Hook to come in and register magazines and guns, it was estimated they had like a 3 or 4% participation rate. of how many guns and magazines were most likely out there versus how many people actually showed up. It was to say it's ineffective would be an understatement. So again, America, we have it as a right versus a privilege. And there is a very discernible difference between those. Do you have any 223 hollow points? Actually didn't know until recently that they made hollow point rifle ammo. Yeah, so typically for rifle ammo, you're not gonna see it called hollow point because it's really not in the sense of like handgun ammunition. Like seeing right here, these are hollow points. These happen to be 45. That's a pretty huge open tip. That's the whole point is just hollow, and that's where that name comes from, hollow point. Versus rifle rounds, when you see some kind of hollow cavity on the tip, you'll see it referenced as open tip or match rounds because that's going to help in the accuracy part of the equation. For rifles, it's not going to be this huge cavity of a hollow point. It's more just the tip is hollow. Really, that helps with accuracy, but also depending on the load and the bullet construction and everything, that also contributes to terminal ballistics, depending on what that ammunition is being used for. So on rifle rounds, you won't see it referred to or packaged or called hollow points because they're not really, it's just the tip of the round, not the whole thing. It's just got a very slight hollow point to it, hollow tip. Chiefly for accuracy. I do have some. I've got some IMI Razor Core. It's basically IMI's clone load of the Mark 262 from Black Hills. That stuff is ridiculously hard to find from Black Hills, and if and when you find it, you're probably going like $1.50 per round. But if you want the same performance out of that, you can do the IMI Razor Core if you even find it or see it available. I think they stopped making it for a while. You'll see the Hornady open tip match or the Hornady Black series is a good way to get very, very close, almost indistinguishably close to the Black Hills 262 load. So, but yeah, that's some of the best performing ammo out of any AR that I own that I've put it through. In terms of group size, very tight, pretty heavy projectile, does pretty well at distance too, even out of shorter barrels, pretty nice. Let's see. Barnes varmint grenades are awesome. Yeah, Barnes bullets out here. Some of our regular customers actually work at the Barnes plant out here. They come in all the time and pretty good people, outstanding product, expensive. But, the gun industry, whether it's guns or ammo or gear, equipment, you get what you pay for. Pretty solid. They do a lot of ballistic tip, all copper construction minus that. Pretty outstanding as well. Rights are privileges and privileges are rights. See Article 4, Privileges and Immunities Clause, as well as 14th Amendment Privileges and Immunities Clause. Yeah, from a legal sense, I see what you're getting at. I've heard that argument before, but I would go back and read the Federalist Papers. I would go through those again, establishing it like, let's phrase it this way. That could almost be an almanac just on its own. From a base layer level, if you want to go to church, you want to have a Bible or a Quran or a Torah or Book of Mormon, whatever it is in your house, you want to pray to a certain God or practice some kind of religion or nothing at all. Is that your right to do that? Or is that your privilege to do that? So you can only go to church and be religious in whatever religion you want to be part of, only because the government says, or they issue that to you, they allow you to do that. Is that the case, or is that a right? It is your right to do that, whether you want to do it or not, or whatever religion you want to do. If you want to speak your mind and have freedom of speech, if you want to go out there and say what you want to say, provided you're not, calling for violence or threatening someone's life or doing something crazy. But if you have opinions and you just want to voice them, does the government allow you to do that? Is that just a privilege you get for now until they decide they don't want to hear it anymore? Or they tell you, hey, it's a privilege, we gave it to you, now we're going to take it back? No, that's your right to do that. When you have a situation and you have charges placed on you, is it a privilege you get to be free from unreasonable search and seizure of your person, your property, your house, your car? Is that a privilege? And the government is just, they're getting a warrant just because to humor you, but it's really a privilege. They could take it. If it was a privilege, they wouldn't even need a warrant. They would just strip that privilege from you, search whatever they want. Fifth Amendment, if they're asking you questions that could possibly incriminate yourself of, hey, did you do this thing we're saying that you did? Is it your privilege to not have to answer that question? So they're going to put you in jail if you don't incriminate yourself. Or is it your right to invoke your Fifth Amendment and not say anything? And when you do that, you're not instantly going to go to jail because you didn't testify or you didn't answer the question. These are rights. They're not privileges. So that should probably be an almanac of its own. I've seen people confused on that in the past. Maybe that could be something to help clear things up. So might be something needed. I heard that fragmenting rounds are devastating. It just depends. So velocity generally is kind of the secret sauce on pretty much any projectile, especially 5.56. Velocity is what penetrates armor. It's what causes extreme cavitation and destabilization of projectiles when it's going so fast, maybe 3,000 feet per second out of a 16-inch AR standard load. And then all of a sudden it stops and it's slowing down very rapidly, and it's doing that very fast. That's a very violent process for just as a matter of physics, any projectile to be going cruising at this really fast, screaming velocity, and in a very short space, in a very short time frame, it's being forced to slow down. There's going to be fragmentation depending on velocity, load, caliber, all that stuff. But at the end of the day, things that fragment, they cause problems. Not ideal if you're trying to limit injury or things like that. It's not a good thing. So I guess that's what I'll say about that. Let's see, Bushrod Washington made a ruling on the Privileges and Immunities Clause that says just that rights are privileges and privileges are rights. Yeah, I also seem to remember a certain decision, the Dred Scott decision, where the Supreme Court of the United States ruled that Black people were property. And because he was property, he had no standing to sue for redress. Just because the courts made a decision, or your favorite judge or some judge somewhere at one time said a certain thing, whatever their agenda was, usually not an originalist like Justice Scalia was. Usually that's going to be more of an activist judge where they know where they want to go and they're just going to bend things to make and fit what end result they want, whether it's actually in line with the Constitution or not. That goes to show not every single ruling should just be taken at face value, and this is the word now. Where case law comes after that and either strips away or totally negates and ends certain rulings of the past, landmark cases even, that's kind of what I'm more interested in, because that's how our laws actually work, as opposed to like, hey, I can I can cite one justice from one time in one particular case that said something that I like, and that's just how it is. No, what happened after all that? How is that? And if it was a bad ruling, like the Dred Scott decision, as the example here, is that something we agree with? What are the chances that's going to get corrected later on? And in that case, it did. Let's see. What are the big advantages of having a good laser on your rifle? I always thought one of the most important things I ever had on a standard issue M4, first of all, was the optic. Red dot, especially if it's 200 meters or less, is kind of the expected engagement distance. Number one is a red dot. Number two, some kind of light, whether it's an IR dedicated light or a white light for those without nods or anything, night vision. But one of the most important things on the gun was the PEQ 15 in that case, or some kind of laser designator in conjunction with night vision. You totally just expanded the envelope of what you can do with that weapon system, what your capabilities are, especially in low or no light conditions, where you can illuminate something completely. Maybe you just have the IR illuminator setting on, so you're not even projecting laser, you're just illuminating it, and you can light it up like a Christmas tree, and you can see that under night vision. But to the human eye, it's nothing's going on. You can't see it. And if we're placing shots at distance, I mean, I remember it was like raining, totally pitch black. We had no lume from the moon. There was no, very minimal ambient light from a crescent moon. It was raining, and there were targets popping up at 150 yards or 150 meters, and not even using the optic, just using the PEQ 15 laser by itself, not the Viz, but the IR laser in conjunction with nods, slamming those targets every time. Didn't have to have a proper cheek weld, maybe kind of contorted in the prone behind a sandbag in a puddle in the rain, and you're just kind of like, but you're looking and you can see it's illuminated. You see the laser on the target, so you see the target come up. You see where you've zeroed your laser, and you're making successful shots and hits, and you're doing that completely in the cover of darkness. To the human eye, you don't see anything minus muzzle flash. Pretty valuable capability to have on a weapon system. I get what you're saying. This comes from old days when the king had privilege. He was privileged in his rights as king, and where the term privileges and immunities. Yeah, so that's stuff that predates, United States as a whole and our legal system. And it's interesting that our legal system is so counter to that train of thought, because we had people who just fought to escape the rule of a king that was being ever more unreasonable as time was going on and doing horrible, tyrannical things. So when they won the war and eventually came out with our second constitution, the one we have currently in place, still running today, they were so adamant about staying far away from that. Where there was a distinction between rights versus privileges, and there was a level of respect and understanding for basic, natural, inalienable rights. And things were not perfect. Things were not perfect, but they at least left the door open for us to make them better in terms of amending our Constitution, having the representation they so desperately wanted. That was one of the biggest issues with King George at the time, was the lack of representation. So being able to vote for your elected officials, have your voice be heard when you vote, and push for the people you want to see in office based on representing your interests in your local community, at your state, but also taking those concerns and bringing them forward to the federal government. That's why all of that is so important in what we do here versus trying to go away from kings and lords and a system like that, where you just had, this is your standing, You cannot ever elevate yourself. You cannot ever escape from it. This is your station in life, and this is just how it's going to be. Yeah, no worries about missing the Monday stream. Every now and then I might have just a grip of time to do like a surprise thing. The Wednesday 6 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, that's going to be my usual time. And at a bare minimum, you guys can expect this. But sometimes if I have extra time, I'll go ahead and do it. Let's see. Do you think that SOP points are viable defense rounds? Honestly, I think that shot placement is key. It's not about the gun you have or the type of ammo in the magazines or that you're shooting. It's not about that as much as if there had to be a priority, I'd say shot placement. You could have, Desert Eagle 50 Action Express loaded with hollow points. But if you suck and you're not trained on that gun or marksmanship in general, or the fundamentals of marksmanship specifically, and you're missing everything, you're not hitting, you're not making any hits on target, shot placement is really what rules the day. People fight over calibers, people fight over bullet construction, people fight over all kinds of stuff. At the end of the day, if I had to pick one thing that I would take and carry with me, it would be shot placement. Whether it's a 22 pistol or an AR-15 or whatever it is, if we're not making shots, then things are still going to suck. If we're actually doing competent, capable shot placement, even if it's a 22 pistol, that's still going to be an issue for the target or the thing in question. So that's, I know guys who all they carry and all they use and all they shoot, their defensive loads, their training loads, it's all the same thing. Standard, if it's 9mm, which the vast majority of it is, 115 grain, full metal jacket, standard ball rounds. And that's what they train with. That's what they carry for defense. That they do everything because they don't want to jump between this really cool hollow points that you can't easily replace when you train and shoot with them. And maybe the point of impact a little bit different than the point of aim. Maybe on your practice rounds, the gun is perfectly zeroed and it's hitting exactly where you want it to. But then you put in your hollow points for carry, and now the gun is shooting a little bit to the right or a little bit to the left, or typically there's an elevation difference where they prioritize consistency, training, shot placement, knowing what that gun is going to do, how it acts, and where it's going to hit. That they're at the point where some guys will just carry full metal jacket as a carry load, have standard XM 193 55 grain full metal jacket and their AR-15s as a defensive load, which out of a 16-inch plus barrel, that is no slouch either. Some guys will do it because shot placement and consistency and knowing that gun and where it's going to hit and what it's going to do is the only thing that's like the top priority. Yep, they said that if they had been citizens, it would have been, then they would, as individuals, have the right to bear arms under the Privileges and Immunities Clause, would be entitled to all the rights of citizens. Yep, Dred Scott was bad, but it has some good things to learn from. One interesting thing is it recognized the right of the individual to bear arms. Just too bad it was denying that right to folks. The king headhunted us, man. Yeah, King George, like an example of that, right after the signing of the Declaration of Independence, because hostilities had already been going on for almost a year at that point, since 1775, back in April, Lexington and Concord. So once the Founding Fathers were able to get together and formalize, at this point, it was not a local rebellion. It was now becoming a thing. Once they were able to formalize it, Thomas Jefferson writing kind of the notes of the whole, group. Once they signed their name and sent it to the king, they knew their life was now completely, undeniably in jeopardy. That if caught, or if they were able to be arrested or found or caught, they were facing torture, imprisonment, and definitely death at the end of a really awful road. So at that point, for them, it became victory or death. Like, we're either going to win and become free and independent and separate from the king and, England, or, we're just going to die in the process, is pretty much what it came down to. So especially for everyone who signed the Declaration of Independence, at that point, they were public enemy number one as far as the king was concerned, once he had gotten it, and everything was kind of further enhanced at that point. So targeting specific individuals, targeting communities or people who were more giving aid or helping or more sympathetic to the cause of revolution. Anybody in that camp at all was public enemy number one, or at least was going to be sought after, hunted down, and try to be destroyed, essentially. Know your ballistics. That's where it's at. Know your coefficient for the round of choice and get good with that. Not every round shoot the same trajectory and angle. Bullet drop changes per round. Okay. Yeah, so with that, I don't think it's 100% necessary for everyone to know the ballistic coefficient or the BC on the chosen load or round. I don't think necessarily everybody needs to download or purchase a really expensive ballistic calculator app or thing, buy, a Kestrel weather station, and, become basically a ballistician or someone who has a pedigree that could work at Hornady or Barnes or one of these guys. I don't think it's 100% necessary for everyone from a ground level, just getting started out. As long as you have a known ammunition load, you have your fundamentals. I'm not concerned about being like a whiz kid. I'm not concerned about shooting fast. I'm not concerned about doing like cool guy tactical reloads that are like super fast John Wick stuff. I'm most concerned about, do you know your gun, how to use it, how it works? Do you know the ammo that you've chosen or have a lot of on hand? You're able to buy this much, and this is what you're shooting for a long time, for a while. Do you know the gun? You know this ammo. You know what this ammo is going to do out of the gun. You've shot it at various distances, different ranges. You know what it does. And do you practice the fundamentals? I care most about the fundamentals of marksmanship: sight alignment, sight picture, trigger press, breathing, proper stance, all these things. And again, I don't care about shooting fast or making it look Hollywood cool. I care most about fundamentals and shot placement and competency with the chosen or given firearm and ammunition, and knowing what that ammo does and where it hits. And if the sights are off, let's get those sights adjusted. If, especially for an AR-15, this comes in big time. Knowing your holdovers or hold unders, knowing what that chosen rifle with that chosen load is going to do at certain various distances. If you have like my preferred 50 meter zero, if that's the zero that you have on your AR-15, everything that you're going to encounter prior to that distance, you're going to be shooting low. Well, how low are you going to be shooting? If it's 5 yards, you have your red dot or optic or sight line here, and the barrel is just physically lower than that on the gun. So at 5 yards, you're going to be shooting maybe 3.5, 4 inches low. Maybe at 10 yards, we're still shooting low, but not as much. Even in the 25 yards, still shooting low, but not as much. So at the end of the day, knowing your holdovers and especially your hold unders for home defense or close range stuff, that's going to be pretty important. But beyond all that, the fundamentals of marksmanship, knowing your chosen firearm, knowing how to use it, how does it work? If it jams, how do I clear that malfunction or get the gun running? And how am I placing, accurate shots? Can I place accurate shots? Shot placement, fundamentals of marksmanship, competency with the firearm in question. If they got all that down and they're doing great, speed will come with time. They don't need to know the science or the ballistic coefficients and numbers and data and stuff. They just need to know what it does. And at what distance do you things start to drop? At what distance am I shooting low? What distance does it come back up? These are things that we should know. So I don't really fault people for not knowing the science or data or numbers or calculations on chosen load and barrel length and stuff. I care more about the fundamentals of marksmanship. Let's see. Yep, my rifle has 2017-75. We went to war in 1775 and responded right away. Yep, good basic rifle. Battle Zero is a good choice, which is how any iron sight or red dot should be sighted. And then, knowing the holds. Yeah, so I actually have a video on it. Just got back from Iraq. I was at one of those really cool Louisiana ranges I was talking about, and I did a video on how do we get the Army 25-meter zero. And in that video, I said, hey, it's not my favorite zero. I'm not saying this is how you need to zero your AR-15 at 25 meters. I'm just, for those interested, I'm going to show how it's done, or at least how we do it in the Army. Again, maybe not the most efficient battle zero. Maybe there's a different zero you could use, the Marine Corps 36-yard, standard 50-meter. Maybe there's some other way you could go that would be better for your situation, but at least this is how it's done. So I showed how to do that, and then I had a follow-on video of showing, okay, I have a red dot battle zero on this rifle, 14.5-inch barrel, and I'm going to be shooting this thing out to 400 yards. So I had, yards versus meters, and I didn't make any adjustments to the sights. I did not change how I was holding on the target at all. And that was the follow-on video. I think was pretty cool because people could see what happens with a battle zero in terms of shooting below at close range, shooting a dead on at 25 meters, and then starting to come over about 200 yards is when it kind of maxed out, and then going further, and then it started to come back down to relatively the sight line. At least showcasing what a battle zero, how to get a battle zero, in that case, the Army 25-meter zero, and then the follow-on video of what this is going to do at distance, provided you're not adjusting the sights at all, you're not adjusting how you're holding on the target, same target, same hold, not changing or adjusting anything. This is what happens. So you might like that video, Carlos. It might be something you might like. You do a 36, just seems the best battle zero for me. 36, pretty competent one, pretty good to go. Let's see, Pew Pew back. Let's see, would you recommend Hesco L10 plates or 3+ or level 4? So in terms of plates, the first discussion that needs to show up, and this is just me, personal opinion, to use or to have the need for plates, first of all, relies or is predicated on the assumption that you're fighting someone who's trained, or you're defending yourself against someone who has training, which would be aiming for center of mass, making hits, knowing fundamentals, battle zero, or what their gun is going to do, all that good stuff we just talked about. So having plates in the first place is in preparation for an understanding that you're even defending yourself against someone who has training to begin with. In the Army, it was, they probably have pretty varying range of training. The Taliban had some foreign talent that would come in and train. They had some battle experienced guys. ISIS also had volunteers from across the world, plus foreign talent coming in to teach and train them. There was some level of training there, plus U.S. Army is also still worried about potential fights with Russia, China, a trained conventional army. So plates were guaranteed to happen, plus a little bit of political side to it, sending American sons and daughters into the combat zone and to go fight and not providing them enough ammo, not providing them body armor, it would not play well. So we had front, back, and side plates. They were ceramic level 4. The advantage of that was the lightest weight solution you could have. Front, back, and side plates, you have the most coverage that you can reasonably get. Some guys just run front and back. Some guys skip the side plates. Side plates are extra inconvenient and uncomfortable. That's the second thing about plates to begin with, is they're going to be heavy, especially AR 500 steel, which I don't recommend. But if that's what we're going to tap into, or that's what we have, those things are going to be heavy. Just front and back alone, on average, going to be about 16 pounds of weight. At least cut that in half if we're doing ceramic plate. So you're taking on protection, at least for vital organs, assuming bullets are coming your way and they strike here. But it's going to be heavy. We're taking on a little bit more protection, assuming that's where we get hit, if we get hit. But we're bringing on less mobility, more weight overall. Whereas, I think honestly, the National Institute for Justice, NIJ, they do all the official testing of plates and body armor. From what I understand, a level 3 rating, if I remember this right, can do up to 1 round of 5.56 armor piercing. 3A is actually a little bit less than that. Wouldn't take you that far. Level 4 or 3 will take you to an M80 or 7.62 NATO AP round, but it's not going to take you to 30-06. Level 4 can do 30-06 armor piercing, at least one shot. 3A is not going to get you into the 308. It's more standard 7.62 by 39, 5.56, pistol calibers up to 44 Magnum. So I guess it just depends. Everything's going to be different needs and stuff. Again, plates, that's an additional expense. It is an additional weight and size burden on you. It also is an intentional thing that you need to be in a position where you actually can throw on your plate carrier and put those plates on your body and then continue the fight or get back into it. Or so if it's a home defense scenario or something, concealed carry in public, whatever, where it's totally out of the blue and random, you're not really going to have that time to just like, oh, wait a minute, hold on, let me grab my plate carrier and then throw it on my body kind of thing. So I don't know. It's somebody learned in the recon world, which we never used plates, like ever, unless we're overseas and we had to. Never used plates because the mission was small teams, 4 to 6-man teams, trying to travel as light as we could, considering all the equipment we had to carry. Very small footprint. Security, part of our security was inherently built into being so small, lightweight, and able to move faster than a squad or platoon size element that would be trying to track or trace us. And don't underestimate how far you can go with just, and I would tell my soldiers this, just sit down, shut up, be quiet, don't move. Don't be surprised how far that will go. Where I've had, Op 4 or the opposing force walk almost on my hand, almost step on me, walking so close, and they just didn't even know I was there. And we were able to, once they left, just keep moving. So it's going to depend on the application. It's going to depend on whatever. But again, plates are going to bring on extra cost, extra weight and size burden. We would do PT sometimes with the plate carriers. We would do obstacle courses and stuff with plate carriers. We would train for that additional weight on our bodies. Overseas, you're wearing that thing every day on mission or on tower guard or whatever you're doing. So getting used to the size and just carrying around that weight every day you built up a physical aptitude or kind of muscle memory to it, or physically conditioned yourself is what I'm looking for on that. Versus most civilians probably buy plates, throw them in a $40 plate carrier, and that thing collects dust in the closet or something. And chances are in the civilian world, if and when you need that, you're not going to have time to throw that shit on your body. And it's also predicated on defending yourself against someone who's trained to hit there, or there's a higher likelihood of it happening. Plus, I've seen a lot of civilians who are just not in that kind of physical or physical shape to adequately wear this thing all day and just live like that. So it's up to everyone. I'm not trying to talk shit on anybody who has plates. I would just say, for most people, if we're looking at like $400 to $500 for nice ceramic plates, where that money could instead go into a really good holster or a red dot for an AR if they don't have one, or a white light on an AR or pistol if they don't have one. Where else could that money go that might best serve you as opposed to the plates? Now, that's not me saying don't buy plates. God bless America, pursue your happiness, get them if you want them. I'm just saying, how could we best serve and kind of check all these other boxes we should be checking if we haven't done some basic things first and we're looking at buying these plates? Let's take that money and get some more basic things before we spend the money on something like that. Kind of, I don't know if that answers the question. Let's see. How long am I streaming tonight? Probably about another 10 minutes at this point. We're going to do some dinner pretty soon, and probably about another 10 minutes. So I'm going to try to finish up here. Do you have and use body armor? Personally, don't have any. It is on the agenda, but if I had to prioritize night vision versus body armor, I'm going for night vision. That's just me. So body armor, it's on the list of things to get, but there's a lot of things vying for our dollars, and I'd rather get another Surefire pressure pad, DS07 tail cap switch. 2 of them would be better for 2 rifles that need them right now. I'd rather get some night vision. I'd rather get more ammo. I'd rather get a Safariland holster for my 19X. There's like a whole list of things I'd rather do right now than buy plates, and the value to me is going to be better served buying those things before I buy plates. ESCO L210 protects all intermediate calibers and a 5.4 a plate. Yeah, I mean, HESCO seems to have good reviews. 5.4 pounds per plate, not bad. But again, just depends on budget, what your needs are, what basic, simple things. Like if you don't even have an AR-15 and you're trying to buy plates, I would say stop on the plates and just build or buy a quality, competent AR-15 is kind of what I'm getting at. If you don't have some of these basic things, I would do those things first, worry about the body armor later, because that's a whole separate thing. I'm thinking worst case fighting unjust cops or dumb rioters. Yeah, and even then, I still wouldn't worry about the plates as much. I mean, we're also talking about, I see most likely they're rioters. If you're living in a city or right outside the city where riots are happening, then again, are you going to be dealing with people who are competent in weapons handling? They actually have equipment, experience, and training to best utilize those systems against you? Or is it better if we don't have an AR and we have, maybe we bought the plates, so we've got plates and we got a pistol, or we could choose to have an AR-15 with a decent red dot but no plates and the pistol. I would choose to have the AR and stuff over having plates but still not having some of these basic things taken care of, because again, having plates is predicated on dealing with people who are effective or have that level of training, which I think from criminals, home invasion, rioters, things like that. At this point in time, what seems most likely for a long time coming here, I just don't think that's worth it. Unless you've already got all those other boxes checked, you just want to grab some. Hey, grab some, cool. I just probably wouldn't prioritize your funding that way quite yet. 3A is Under Armour to make your plates comfortable, but 3A is still useful for concealment with limited protection. It's also good in conjunction with 3 or the industry. Yeah, the only experience I have is with the plates and protective stuff we got, whether it was IOTV or plate carriers. So I've seen some of the stuff on the civilian side. I definitely know for sure AR-500 is not something I want. Definitely has to be ceramic. The Hescos seem to get the best reviews and the best rating based on price. So if we're in that position to buy plates, might be a way to go. But like I've said in other videos, I'm not sponsored by any company. Hesco doesn't even know that I exist. But it seems like a pretty good way to go for the money. Budget aside, would you choose thermal over night vision? Also, maybe you could just get a vest rated to stop pistols instead of rifles. Seems that would be sufficient. If money was no issue, I would choose a thermal and night vision. So we have the PSQ-20 Alphas, PSQ-20 Bravos, actually some new high-speed stuff that's getting fielded now. I would choose a night vision thermal optic that does both, where you can just do night vision, you can just do thermal, or you can do a blend of both. And it's like, if you've ever looked through like a PSQ-20 Alpha or Bravo where you have night vision and thermal, you can set it on that setting. It's really, it's like this sci-fi kind of experience just looking through it. Like you would, I remember when we first got issued those in Afghanistan, I was standing doing some tower guard at night. It's pretty cold, and I stood in the same position for about a minute, and I was just looking at the landscape under nods and thermals because I had it. Then I stepped away to grab my cigarettes, and I looked down where I was standing, and I could see night vision. I could see it just in green, but the thermal portion, I could see the individual parts of my boot print, literally where I was just standing, that the heat transfer from my feet and socks to my boots, even the rubber teeth of my boot prints were just sitting there on the plywood, just hanging out. And it was like, whoa, I can see that someone, in this case me, was standing there for some amount of time, standing there long enough to imprint the thermal signature onto the plywood, where you couldn't see that just under night vision by itself at all. And I thought that was pretty ninja. So if I could have, budget aside, I could have anything, it would be night vision and thermal combined into one. That is insane. If you ever get the opportunity to go, do some night shooting with it, or at least just look through it, or take it overseas. If you guys, military members out there, night vision plus thermal is like next level going to Mars ninja shit. And I would love to have that binos as opposed to a monocular. But I mean, we're binos, thermal, and nods. Outside of legal limitations or ITARs or other stuff, we'd be looking at least $50,000 to $60,000 probably for a really good set of binos that does that. Plus, there's going to be like 8 batteries on my head back here because thermals suck down batteries like crazy. Let's see. Also, maybe you could just get a vest rated to stop pistols. Instead of a vest or like an old school Vietnam, like flak jacket kind of thing, I would go for a plate carrier, the Crye Precision JPC 2.0. That's what I got. Love it. That's what I had in Iraq. Still a very competent plate carrier. There's definitely others that are really great. That's my personal preference. Beyond that, it's really, I put a lot of effort into a chest rig, where it has no plate carrying potential at all. It's just a chest rig. You throw it on. It's like just a man bra that has magazines and other stuff in it, where it's not an incredible amount of weight, but just having, we would call it your rack or your flick or your chest rig, just having that and throwing it on your body real quick, even if you throw it over the shoulder as you're going, and then you can worry about properly snapping it on real quick later, instantly enhances what your capability is just by throwing that on your shoulder. Like I said in the 2020 loadout video, just having a bandolier of 3 AR mags, just throwing that over your neck. Now it's kind of like a chest rig kind of thing, where all of a sudden you just amped up your capability and you didn't have to sit there fidgeting with stuff or slinging this stuff and buckling here and doing this. Like, throw it over and go. You have stuff on your body that can extend what you can do for much longer. So chest rigs and stuff, I would prioritize that. If we don't have a competent or quality chest rig at this point, I would prioritize that if we don't even have that. I wouldn't worry about a Vietnam style flak jacket, old school IBA, or even plates or plate carrier. If we don't have a chest rig, probably start there. Let's see. I didn't know that there was optics that could do both. Can people buy them? I actually don't know. In civilian world, you can buy thermal. You can also buy night vision. I don't know of many products out there that are both in one. And if they are out there, they are definitely really expensive. Night vision technology has actually started to get lower cost and more efficient and lighter weight over time. But thermal technology, I don't want to say it's plateaued, but it's at a point where it's pretty much always going to be expensive. Maybe it can get better with battery life or power usage, but it's always going to be really pricey. So I don't know the legality of it, but I know civilians have thermal, civilians have night vision. I guess you would have to buy a night vision optic or a night vision unit, put that first, and then put a thermal unit in front of it on the gun. You couldn't go the other way. It would have to be night vision first, then thermal. Because night vision, you're looking through glass and tubes. Thermal, you're looking at a presented computer-created image. So you couldn't go the other way. You'd have to do like a night vision unit on the gun and then a thermal scope or FLIR scope on the gun in front of that. And then, but that wouldn't even work because it would have to be a combined unit. It's not going to work like that because then you would just flare out on the image. You wouldn't even like get anything. Okay. See, I see steel on a whim during times when it was being basically given away, but yeah, I got some ceramic. I like them, but they're not too durable, so I picked up some of the Poly's plates on a whim. Yeah, ceramic, a little bit fragile. We would always have to get our plates x-rayed, and if they find fractures in the plate, now it becomes a training plate. Like, you are not taking this down range. Here's a new set of plates. This now became a training plate. So yeah, ceramic. Good news, lightweight, easier, more mobility. Downside, really expensive usually. And, you don't want to be in a position of just dropping your plate carrier, throwing it in the corner when you get off mission or something. You want to set your plate carrier down because you don't want your plates to just slam on the ground and risk something going on. Optics make you feel like an alien predator, doesn't it? Yeah. Having thermal and nods in one unit and seeing the world, it's crazy. Absolutely crazy. Now they want arm and a leg for armor. No deals like before. I did see a deal from NVG Night Vision guys. That was a PVS 14 with an IR laser sight. It was about 2K, Gen 3, auto gated. Hey, if you can grab even like a PVS 14 monocular, especially if it's white phosphor or anything like that, and you can get it for a decent price, I would snag it up. Having a monocular is better than having nothing, especially if you also have some kind of laser designator, PEG 15, D-ball, MAL would be ideal on the gun. At that point, now you have total night capability where the vast majority of everyone around you, including law enforcement, does not. So that's everyone and his brother can buy plates, especially AR 500 plates or some of the lower cost ceramic plates, but almost no one, including most law enforcement, almost no one has fighting in the night capability, like at all. Nods or a designator on the gun. So that's why it's my priority, because once you have that, now you can start to conduct more training, get used to it, get your laser designator zeroed and everything. And now you have a capability that almost no one in a 100-mile radius is probably going to have. So depending where you live, that's why I care more about that than I care about plates right now. Let's see. Auto-gated is a must if someone plans to use it where lights may get bright. White light will defeat non-gated night vision. Yeah. Generally, any ambient lights, not ambient light, ambient lights that are out there, street lights, things like that. can flare out your night vision, because night vision works on the principle of taking whatever ambient light exists, usually from the moon or the stars or light pollution, depending on your environment, and it just amplifies that, projects it in a green color so you can see it better. But if you see headlights coming down the road and you're facing it on the side of the road, it's gonna flare you out on most night vision. That's some of that high dollar stuff of trying to minimize the impact of getting flared out. Bet you can probably buy those optics. They're just guaranteed to be a yearly salary. Yeah. Some night vision is, I mean, if you had $1,500, depending on how choosy you are with where you're buying from and how reputable they are, is it a rebuild unit? What components and things are going into the unit? What housing or lenses does it have? You could still, for about $1,500, you could still get yourself at least a PVS 14 monocular. Binos would be preferable or better. And I'm not talking about like an old school PVS 7 where it's got two lenses but one viewport. I'm talking about, or excuse me, two viewports but one lens. I'm talking about actually having two lenses, because that's when you're going to start to have a better chance of actually gauging distance. That's one thing. If you've never done some serious training with night vision, I would always run my soldiers through night vision training of having them walk with the monocular on, where they don't have any depth perception anymore. And one eye is seeing complete darkness and the other eye is actually seeing stuff. PVS 14, you can only rotate the circular lens to focus on one distance at a time. So kind of setting it about, I mean, it just depends. You could set it like 20 yards, 50 yards. But practicing walking with night vision, a lot of guys are going to be tripping and, stubbing their toe and almost falling. Some guys, it's not a natural human thing to do, to walk at night with no depth perception. But once you've had enough time under nods and you really experience that, you actually become pretty decent at it. But not, binos would be better. Having two, worst case, you buy PVS 14, and then when budget allows, you buy another one, and then you bridge them together. Not ideal, but still much better than just having one. So it just kind of depends what we can all tap into. But let's see. Walking at ×3 is fun in the forest. All right, guys. Thank you guys for being here. I'm going to have to call it tonight. But yeah, we're going to be looking at next Wednesday, 6 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. That's my weekly Q&A session. Thank you guys for being here. Let me know if you have any questions, or if you guys are watching this long after this was live, you guys got questions in the comments, I can answer them as well. But yeah, you guys have a good night. Thanks for being here, and I will see you guys later.